Today we have a interesting topic. We'll talk about anger post-betrayal, a step that sometimes in healing or people's spiritual healing journeys gets omitted because it has a bad reputation. It's toxic. You don't want to stay in anger. You don't want to be resentful. That kind of stuff. I definitely fell into this thing, this kind of like trap. My big fear around my betrayal healing journey in the early stages was I don't want to be this angry, miserable guy. And I did everything I could to stay away from anger. And so today we'll do some work on validating anger, which will be helpful regardless of where you are on your healing journey post-betrayal. And it might benefit you in the future because, let's face it, I don't think anyone of us can escape anger in our relationships and in our life. But first, I thought I'll take us through a little meditation. So let's all sink in with a short breathing exercise. This will only take a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, maybe 4. We'll see how we go. So if you could gently close your eyes, I'll take you through a breathing exercise called box breathing. Some of you are very familiar with this. So I'll basically count your inhale on 4, then you'll pause, hold your lungs full on 4, you'll exhale fully to a count of 4, and you pause again with your lungs empty to a count of 4. And we do a couple of cycles, and we'll be golden. All right? So if you want to sit yourself comfortably and gently close your eyes, no need to force your eyelids shut really tightly, just gently let them rest. And inhale gently on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Pause. Hold your lungs full. 2, 3, 4. And empty your lungs. 2, 3, 4. Hold your lungs empty. 2, 3, 4. And inhale. 2, 3, 4. Pause. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And inhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 2, 3, 4. And return to normal breath. However your body wants to breathe, just follow your intuition. Breathe gently. However you want to enjoy your breath right now. And notice, where is your breath landing in your body? Is it high in the chest or low in the belly? Somewhere in between? Noticing this has a very grounding effect, and you can do it anytime you want. Where is your breath landing in your body right now? If your body could speak in sensations alone right now, what emotion is it whispering or shouting in this moment? Is it readiness, joy, or fatigue? A little bit of stress, or a lot? If your body could speak in sensations, what emotion would it express? Just notice without judgment. Notice where any tension or heat or stillness lives in you. Stillness is a beautiful feeling too, often overlooked amid the chaos that's happening within us and around us. So just notice. Just notice. Good. Now take a deep breath in, and on 3, open your eyes and land here safely. 1, 2, 3. Nice exhale, and you're back in the room. Excellent. During today's group, we'll talk about anger and that you are allowed to get angry. As I discussed previously, in some spiritual journeys, oftentimes spiritual healing journeys, oftentimes people like to hop over the step of being annoyed and angered and vexed because anger carries such, I don't know, negative reputation, like I myself, like I mentioned, I didn't want to end up this, angry, shriveled, resentful guy after my betrayal story started. And so I was definitely guilty of, yes, Thomas, spiritual bypassing. I didn't want to go into that anger thing because it's uncomfortable. Anger is an uncomfortable energy if it's not wielded well, right? And so many of us, and I'm not pointing at anyone in this room, but I think many people out there who have been betrayed were taught directly or indirectly, so subtly, that anger is dangerous or anger is shameful. So there are people walking around there with some anger shame, right? Or that if you are angry, you become unlovable. Oftentimes that's maybe like subtle teaching from your social or family circles, right? But anger, I'd say that anger itself isn't wrong. And it's a signal. And it tells us something really, really important. It tells us that a boundary has been crossed. And for people who haven't got very strict boundaries, or don't even know that they can have boundaries. Like, I didn't know about boundaries until I was in my early 30s. So for people who don't have that idea of boundaries, it's difficult to see anger as a signal that a boundary has been broken, because if you don't know what a boundary is, then that signal is kind of lost. So it also points that something matters to me, right? Something happened, I'm angry. That is a signal that something here matters to me. And healthy anger, I'd say, is not about revenge. It's not about avenging either. It's about reclaiming the space to say, this is not okay, and help us validate our own self-worth, right? Because you can use the energy of anger to kind of stand up for yourself, and not necessarily in a very kind of like violent, belligerent way. Although if you're at the very early stages of practicing healthy anger, it will come out in an awkward way. You might come up as this, angry dude, or, a mean witch, and people will judge you. But standing up for yourself, saying this is not okay, and the more often you do it, the more your capacity and capability to do it with kindness grows. Does that make sense? So, it takes a while to learn, to harness this energy and then be kind, not forceful, but yet steadfast and steady. It's like, hey, I didn't like it, so how about we communicate in a different way from now on? But in a one-to-one setting, we learn to look for opportunities for changing a specific relationship that's bugging us, right? So if you think that you have the capability to change something in the relationship, you will automatically activate your reticular system in your brain that looks for opportunities, and you'll seek out those opportunities to change the relationship if you believe that it's changeable. So the key teaching points here around validating healthy anger and allowing ourselves to be angry and feel that anger post betrayal is seeing betrayal is seeing anger as an ally, not as an enemy, right? So healthy anger, I would compare it to a fire in the fireplace, right? So it warms, it illuminates, it protects. You can cook food with it, right? So it aids you and it helps your survival. But when that fire is uncontrolled, you can burn the house down. You can burn the whole neighborhood down. You can start a wildfire if you live in the forest. So when it's not contained, when it's not controlled, and when it's not respected, it gives. When it's not controlled, when it's not respected, it creates danger. But when it's respected, when it is controlled, it gives life, it gives safety, and it gives protection, right? Mm-hmm. And I mentioned earlier that it can also be a signal. It is a signal for something being important to us and a boundary being broken. So, in this sense, anger often becomes our kind of a guardian, like the guardian of our boundaries, right? That has this big bell says, ding, 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 this is not okay. This is not okay. I didn't like this, And it's down to you then to process this information. Do you just take the words of your anger and throw it at the person who broke your boundary, or do you process it and make it so that the communication proceeds forth with kindness and it's a gentle request rather than a reaction? This is where the difficulty lies, where we have to grow ourselves personally and develop so that we can be a filter to this anger reaction and filter out the communication in such a way that the person who is receiving it can actually receive it and process it, right? And not get defensive. Because when we throw a bunch of energy at someone, they'll get defensive. So there's no point in communicating. Whatever you say doesn't matter because they're defending themselves energetically. Their mind is on a mild fight or flight, or whatever degree of fight or flight, and they'll just try to attack you in their defense, right? So filtering that anger, having the ability to keep some consciousness there in that filter area, helps you be more in charge of how you communicate, and then changing your relationships, creating kind requests, right? Makes sense so far? I have some questions for you guys so we can have a little discussion. When in your life were you, when in your life were you first taught to hide or soften your anger? Not be angry, not be effusive with your anger. If any of you, in terms of being raised in a specific way, I think there's a lot to be said for, I guess, not showing people that you've been affected emotionally. Or there's also, in my view, a connection made between you kind of losing it and a loss of dignity. Oh, you lost your cool because of what so and so did. So it's almost like people seeing you in this state of loss of cool, it feels like an impact has been made on your dignity. And so I wonder if you guys can think about any kind of way of expressing anger in a way that protects dignity and your kind of emotional safety, because you also don't want to lose it and just feel unsafe with yourself, punching walls and damaging your bones and hands and so on. Have you come across a way of expressing your anger in a way that protects your dignity and your health and your safety? To wrap up the coaching part of today's meeting, what I want you to remember is that anger is often also grief's bodyguard. Showing up to protect us from feeling exposed or feeling too vulnerable, right? So when we're receiving it we are at the receiving end of some attack, and that has exposed our vulnerability and hurt us deeply. But once we welcome anger in healthy ways, anger can move from being a sharp, reactive force into a clear, assertive, and steady energy that sets boundaries and affirms our worth. Because when you set your boundary, that's you're standing up for your worth. But then when you exercise it, when somebody breaks it, and then there are consequences, you follow through. That's the really difficult part, and that is really a self-worth building exercise. So healing really happens when we stop asking, how do I get rid of this anger, right? How do I bypass it, right? And we start asking, what is important for me here? What is it pointing at? What is it trying to protect? What truth is it pointing toward, right? So in this way, it's the anger is the bodyguard of our boundaries and things that are important to us that we sometimes are not aware of until we become so very angry. And in trauma recovery, we often tend to bypass anger as this toxic thing and jump straight to grief and jump straight to acceptance. But unfortunately, then we get triggered and we go back to anger because it hasn't been embraced and welcomed, right? It hasn't been validated. So validation is what we will do today in the hypnotic part of our meeting. And we will reframe anger. We will reframe anger as an ally. We will reframe anger as a boundary keeper that says, I deserve better, right? Are you guys ready? Fantastic. Let's do this.